So I have a clue. I have a clue and a reason why people like to travel a lot. Because I loved to travel. Actually, I was dying to travel and get away from the stagnation, even in my childhood. And so when a person wants to travel a lot, whether they're a runaway, they're a constant traveler, or they just can't seem to sit still, it's an evolutionary type of situation going that the person isn't aware of because it may seem like they're trying to run away from their problems. Not necessarily. They're trying. From what I gather from even my world, is that a person who is going from microbiome to microbiome is trying to collect data. This is now the evolutionary adaptation sequence is collecting data and using, and well, how you use it will be, you won't know until later, but it's collecting data. The thing is when you collect data, at some point you're going to have to use that data for something. And if that data is just like, oh, I just have all these great memories and that's it, and you die anyways, what were all those experiences for? You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, you have pictures, but then even those pictures fade away. Okay, now you have the computer. A lot of people go back to those pictures and they look at it, whether it's the kids or other people who are in the younger generations, go back to the pictures. But eventually that doesn't, it'll fade into black because everyone in that world that would go to those pictures would then disappear. And so I look at anyone that wants to travel, I look at anyone that's very restless, they're looking to evolve. And so when you look at runaways, when you look at constant travelers, yes, they are looking to evolve, but they don't know it. Okay? And so I think that's why I finally settled down, because I got enough information as far as the traveling portion. I mean, yeah, I could go. I haven't been to Europe yet. One day I want to go to Europe, like Italy, and see the Vatican. There's definitely a lot of places I have yet to go to, but I still have plenty of life ahead of me that I will eventually go there. But at some point, you got to take that information and do something with it. Okay? I mean, what's the point in traveling and having all these experiences if it's not being used for something to make your next evolutionary phase even that much better? Because I'll tell you what, I mean, I remember when I said to my boss when I was a nanny that I'm going to make something in my life, and I'm going to go across country, I'm going to drive, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I did it. And yeah, I mean, certain things I wasn't prepared for, but that's okay. I was able to get through those situations, because sometimes you don't know what you're getting into until you actually get there, and then okay, you deal with it. But all of those experiences was data to then look back on and understand, later on why and how and, and whatever. So humans they're nomadic when they're looking to evolve. So back when humans were like in Neanderthals and hunter-gatherers, they were looking to evolve. Yeah, it was survival, yes. And so one aspect is survival, but the other aspect is taking on new information, because when you take on new information with different circles of people and belief systems and cultures, you're taking on evolutionary data that's only going to make your world so much more wider, and then who knows what else could be available with that data that's stored away in those storage banks and your memories. And then what are you going to do when you finally settle down? Because right now, I mean, I'm still trying, like the last 10 years since I've been married to my husband, I'm still wanting to evolve, but I'm not going off in other places. Now, I remember in the beginning of my marriage, I always wanted to go off every weekend to do something. Like I was restless every weekend. And in my childhood, when we were kids, we went and did a lot of things on the weekends. My parents were very mobile on the weekends. It was like either we did family vacations or we went to fairs and went to art fairs and art shows and different towns, because they wanted to do stuff on the weekends. That was their way of unwinding. And so we did that. And so then I wanted to carry that over my marriage. My husband's just like, I just want to go fish. And maybe and I'm like, there's Ohio, there's so much to Ohio. I want to see everything. But I mean, I did see enough here in Ohio. But then that started calming down. After I've gone through the JJ protocol, I noticed a change in my expectations on the weekends. I didn't need to go and have to be out and about all the time every weekend, whether it's to a bar or whether it's to another city. Because when you get there, okay, yeah, it's fun. I don't get me wrong, seeing new and different places is fun. And it's for the data banks for whatever down the road, should you do something with it, if you even have a plan, or you just going just to go because you're restless. But now I have if I want, yeah, it'd be great now. Actually right now, I don't really want to travel anywhere at this point because of all the stupid virus stuff. And I've done enough traveling, enough evolving that I don't need to have to do that. So I kind of feel for those of you that are still very restless and still trying to evolve, but you're trying to do it externally versus internally. And so now I've already done the external, evolution, because I've had a very, very colorful life. And now it's about the internal evolution that I am now exploring. And that's going to be hard to switch gears for people, that's why then the vectors and all the different cures out there, people are going to partake in, because they still haven't they still haven't controlled their evolutionary traveling spirit. Not a bad thing per se, but at some point you're going to have to switch gears and figure out how to evolve internally. And so I'm trying to write this part of this chapter about the environment and the microbiome, and I have VIRON in the middle of just superimposed, because it's about there's three aspects to this world. There's the internal environment. Hey everybody, there's the external environment, and then there's biodiversity, or the DNA. And so the external environment is physics and image. And image is electrical impulses, matter, gases, and acids. There's the internal environment, which is, yes, the same thing. It's physics and it's image. And then there is the DNA, the biological DNA, which is all the viruses that are impacting your external environment and your internal environment. And then there's a purpose. And then it's going down to the most microbial level, the microbiome, and explaining microbiome, or biodiversities, viruses, parasites, protozoa, proteins, fungus, and bacteria, and their evolutionary spirits of traveling in different packs and glomming on to different communities, and then creating a purpose and evolving and staying alive, not dying. And so even our microbial selves have an evolutionary purpose of traveling, evolving, but not dying. See, viruses don't die. They just jump from host to host. Now, I'm not saying that you as a human need to go and possess other people, but you can still take on new information without cannibalizing someone or something, or a person, place, or thing, and still be traveling in your mind without having to be out there all the time. But there's always a balance. There's the evolutionary sequence in your mind, and there's the evolutionary sequence out there traveling to different microbiomes to understand different people and different belief systems. And so maybe now our society has said, okay, people need to just chill out on the traveling, because you're not evolving. Everyone out there that's traveling right now, that's not on the Jeju, they're not evolving. They're actually depleting themselves, because the more they go into different microbiomes without giving themselves layers and layers of insulation and protection, and protection means that you're not being cannibalized by your environment, then what are you doing it for? You're out there just taking on information, and there's nothing going to come from that information. That information is going to die with you. And that's the whole point of the J-Juice, is not to have all that evolutionary stuff and the data that you've gathered throughout your whole life doesn't die with you. That you have something to offer to the next generation that is evolutionary itself, but they don't make the same mistakes that you did. You correct all of their predispositions and all of their glitches in their viral DNA. You correct all that when they're young. Then as they get older, they won't be so restless, and they will, balance out their traveling evolutionary spirit and their internal intelligent evolutionary spirit. And so when people say, oh yeah, people are not made to sit and watch Netflix all day and sit behind a computer all day and do, well, I mean, there is a balance. If you can handle the environment and you're fucking strong and you're evolutionary, then yeah, you will figure out how to strategically move around in all these different ecological systems called cultures and cities and counties and countries without having all of those different ecological systems cannibalize you. And so maybe it's time to sit your ass at home, watch some Netflix, and cultivate your brain and figure. And also, what that means with cultivating your brain is releasing all the glitching viral DNA that's causing all of your issues, and start settling down in your spirit, in your body, mind, your spirit. And then when you are a whole person, right, whatever that means, and it means different to everything to everybody, right? Then you're able to go out there in the world and give something to the world and offer things to the world that people can benefit from. You're not taking from the world so much. And that means in body, mind, and spirit. You could be taking resources from the world and not giving back. You could be, taking the energy from people and not giving back. You could be, I mean, the body, mind, and spirit can be can cannibalize the world, or it can have a balance of taking and giving, and I don't say 100% equal, but in a balanced way where you're not usurping all the resources from people, places, and things. And so everything it does come down to physics and thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is how heat and energy affects different objects and the energy conversions. And so the whole point of the JJ mentality is learn how to convert energy to your benefit without destroying your community simultaneously. And so writing about this is like very interesting because everything plays off each other. It's not just like, well, this happens first, this happens second, this happens third. It does if you're coming from a perspective, it's all relativity. If you're coming from the perspective of the external environment, then yes, you're going to come from external, then internal, and then all the constituents that make up the external and internal, and that's like the biodiversity, all the factors that are being affected. But if you're coming from the internal, then that's your perspective. From the internal, then it's external, then it's the DNA, which is the biodiversity. And so everything's relative to perspective. So then, yes, you look at physics and you look at the theory of relativity. Everything's relative based upon your perspective, whether you're inside, outside, or you're a biodiversified DNA particle that's made up of a bunch of different, communities. And so that's one of the biggest challenges of writing this, because everything does come from perspective. And it's when you write something, for me, I have to now I have to explain that it's not just the external first, because everything is happening like all simultaneously together, like all at once. And so you have to come from 3 different perspectives to show that they're all still happening, but this, just like you're watching a movie and you're seeing the perspective from the protagonist, the antagonist, and so it's interesting. That's how stories are told, is from different perspectives. But that's no different than trying to explain how physics and biology and sociology and all that are how they work with each other. But you have to come from all the 3 different perspectives. If not, then you are very biased and compartmentalized. And so it's connecting everything. And so when you watch a movie, like watching Netflix, right? And you're watching only one perspective, that's like a one-dimensional type of thought or plot line. Then you have a more complex type of script. Then you have, a perspective from not only the protagonist, but then the antagonist. So now you get a 2-dimensional plot line. And then there's a 3-dimensional plot line. Then you're getting the, another perspective from another source in that movie. And so then that movie, and then how that movie is amazing, like The Walking Dead, is, and they're tying all of those different plot lines together. And you're seeing how they interact with each other, and then what the ultimate intention is, what the outcome is. And then that's how they keep you engaged, because you're getting to see all the 3 different perspectives. Because if you only saw one perspective, then yeah, it's like a formulaic novel. It's like reading Flowers in the Attic. You're only getting from the kid's perspective, but you're not seeing it from the old man who is the antagonist who everyone's afraid of from his perspective. So then you're like, okay, so you don't get one perspective, and that's no different than being one dimensional when you're activist. Oh, I'm pro-vax, I'm anti-vax, I'm this and I'm that. And so learning how to look from the pro-vax perspective, the anti-vax perspective, and the government perspective, now you're realizing that there's more to the story than just what you see and what you feel and what you believe. And so sometimes maybe you need to sit at home and watch some movies to understand perspective, to understand very good plot lines, very good storylines, and then to understand the human body. It's not just, oh, I feel pain and that's my only perspective is to squelch pain. There's a reason why that pain's there. Look from the perspective of your microbes trying to fucking survive, and you're trying to kill it with all of your pills, powder supplements, and detoxes and vectors. And then you look at it from another perspective of other parts of your body. I mean, that's the whole point of this JJ mentality, is to learn from all the different perspectives. But that means that, yeah, you do have to go out and travel, but you have to do it in a very safe way nowadays. Or you learn how to cultivate the brain, but maybe first, before you do that, maybe you do a few waterfalls so you get your viral DNA all aligned, so you don't have 60 billion viral messages being sent to your immune system, sending off glitchy messages, and then you're so underweight, overweight, and you have cancer disease, autoimmune disorders, and chronic illness. And people have cancer disease, chronic illness, and autoimmune disorders, and they're aging and degrading. They live a very one perspective, one-dimensional life. I eat, I sleep, I poop, I take all this medication and herbs and supplements and extracts to squelch the pain, and I die. And that is most of our society, is living a one-dimensional, one-perspective lifestyle. And so, yeah, I have an issue with that. That's why I don't get along with most people, because most people are very one-dimensional, one perspective, and it's formulaic. It's like reading Flowers in the Attic. V.C. Andrews' book. Oh, it's only one perspective of the kids, and that's it. Maybe a little bit of their supporting, actors or supporting characters, but you don't really get the full bigger picture of what's going on unless you read another book that gives them the grandfather's perspective. But then now you're reading a series, but I don't even remember if they had. I read a lot of it, but when I was a kid, because they were really easy to read, I don't remember the perspective of the grandparent and what he went through. The one that was evil, that didn't want to know that he had grandchildren. but that was a great example, because my mom would say, oh, you're reading V.C. Andrews. And she's just like, okay. And so there's other books out there that are a bit more intricate and have a lot more of the different perspectives of the different characters. And so, when a person is not ADD and they can actually read a book and they figure out what's going on, they see that there is a lot more than just the one dimension. So very good writers and very good storytellers give the perspective of like all the characters, but do it in a way where it's not so wordy and they can weave it all together. And so that's what I'm doing right now with my book, is trying to give so many different perspectives and weave it all together to give you some type of true story, so it doesn't come off one dimensional. And so this is what I'm trying to urge humanity, is to stop being one dimensional, stop being one perspective, evolve. Learn that it's not just your way is the only way. And I'm learning that too. Believe me, I've had to take myself out of situations so I don't have to keep clashing with the one way people. And I'm trying to look at from all different perspectives. And people are just like, no, it's only this way and that way. And that's all I want to see. And that's all I want to do. And I'm okay. Okay, fine. And so that's why I move around in circles. But then I find that I can't run away. So I just take myself out of everything and say, you know what? You all figure it out. I'm here to give you some information. You take it or not, whatever. Because I'm done running away. I'm done moving from place to place to place. My husband's the same way. He was a mover and shaker. I mean, thank God he moved. Thank God he traveled to California before he met me. He went with his friends and they lived in California, like in the Bay Area. And I was just like, wow, so he was able to take himself out of his little tiny homogenous circle of life and live somewhere different and hang out with a different culture, met different people. That's why my husband is very evolutionary. That's why him and I get along. Because he was able to get out of his homogenous, one-dimensional life. And yeah, he's still very programmed, of course. But he has the potential because he took himself out of that homogenous circle and put himself in a heterogeneous type of situation. And so he has a little bit of evolutionary spirit. Now I'm just trying to prompt more evolutionary spirit out of him. Not easy. It may not even happen, you know, but at least that's what gave us the foundation to work from, because he was already more evolved than not. Believe me, I couldn't get with anyone that was homogenous, so homogenous that they never seen the outside world, because they would think I'm crazy. And people do think I'm crazy. They think I'm crazy. You know why? Because they never met anyone. They never met anything other than their little circle of people. They never took themselves out of their comfort zone and put themselves in a situation where they're the minority. No. People who don't understand other cultures and other things have to be the majority in their world. They can't lose control. And so they stay in the areas where they have the most control with their friends, their family, their little cliques, and that's their life. And then they go over the cliff with everybody else. And so, holy crap. Because I watch a lot of Netflix and I love very intricate storylines. I don't read so much anymore. I just now read stuff on Facebook or read stuff on the internet, stuff that I want. But I understand storylines and I understand perspective and I understand weaving things together to bring it all into then, you know, something that people get. Whether it's a good story or whether it's facts and figures and truths and all that and perceptions. And so there's my little thing. I wasn't planning to even have this type of revelation, but holy crap, now I understand it. Now I get even the bigger picture. But I knew I had a very evolutionary spirit ever since I was a kid, because I was so dying to live and to evolve, and I wasn't getting what I needed at home. And so I had to leave at an early age because I wasn't getting enough food and I wasn't getting enough. I'm not that they were starving me, but they had very, 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 very strict parameters. And when you're trying to evolve, you can't put the kibosh down on a kid that's trying to evolve. There's children that are starving out there and the parents are like, oh, you only get this much food and you only get this and you can't have this treat. You can't have this. You can't have this. But then, you know, there's that balance of not spoiling a child, but you want to give all the food, but the kid doesn't want to eat. Then there's other issues that goes on when kids don't want to eat their food. But when kids want to eat a bunch, you freaking feed them. When they're dying for that hostess, there's a reason why. Not because they're going to turn into a diabetic. That's the fears of the parents, because the parents have these food issues when they're withholding food from their kids. So, you know, when people leave situations because they're not getting what they need from that situation, and maybe it's okay. Not everybody can fulfill your needs or wants, but when you're around people, you should be able to get some kind of mutual beneficial type of thing. And if you're not, then you don't need to be there, because then they're taking more than you're getting. And that's why people move apart and move on and do whatever, because they're not getting their needs met or they're not getting their wants met. And that's okay. At least be grown up enough to know when to leave a situation, regardless of what it is. Okay? So that's why people are travelers, because there's still that evolutionary sequence that's working within them, but they don't even realize what's going on. But you got to do something with that information. You can't let it just sit and fester and die with you. Now you take that information and make it work to your benefit and to your community's benefit. So you're not one-dimensional. Because people who travel around, they're still one-dimensional. How do you travel around and be all over the place and be in different places and take on different cultures and still be fucking one-dimensional? That I don't get. But that's because the programming is so intense. And so then the J-Juice then starts splitting up all those, that one-dimensional programming, and then finally you're able to see things in a very different way. I know that was funny. All right, I'm going to go, and I have new energy towards now this part of my book. I can figure out how to say some stuff. All right, thanks guys. Bye.